the Bible has real life relatable stories. Oh, you're having trouble in your family, you can read the story. Oh, these things really happen.
And just like Rachel, God had really great things in store for her, but how much smoother would life have gone for her if she would have surrendered to God from jump and been like, you know what, these are my circumstances, these are what my choices got me, let me surrender to God. So I think it's such a good lesson that you don't need to let your attitude and your circumstances bring you to a point where you're not fully surrendered to God. Because there's something good on the other side of the wilderness.
And they missed out on what could have been a really beautiful sisterhood with one another.
People can take a lot of things from you. There's many people that have had their innocence stripped away from them, whatever that may be. No one can take your joy.
It's true.
Your joy, if you let that go, that is your choice. So she could have hung on to her joy, celebrated with her sister, say, God, I know the promises you have for me. I love you. I surrender to you. I know I'm going to have a baby one day, and lived in joy. How much better would her life have been living in joy? But think of the stress that comes on you when you live in bitterness and hatred and jealousy. Like, it's just a yucky way to live. And so if anything, for me, looking at this story, it's choose joy and keep your joy and don't let anyone take it, because they can't. You give that away.
That's good.
Yeah, and just to expound on that, it was really a competition, which is, it's kind of odd. Like, when you think about each other, like if Jean and I competed, like who could have the most kids faster, I definitely would have won. But it's just funny to think about, like, that's not normal. Like, you don't, and it's hard because you have to go back culturally too. But just to see her kind of throw her servant, or her, I don't know what they were called, I think it was her servant, Bilhah, in his face and say, here, just get her pregnant so this can kind of be my kid. So it was interesting to see that, but it was also interesting to see how, and later in Genesis chapter 30, God said that God remembered Rachel and he listened to her and he enabled her to conceive. So I think, you look at that, and despite what she did, now I think it's hard to say, is Bilhah out of the will of God or not? Because it was a cultural thing to use your servant to provide offspring. But despite that, that issue, God blessed her.
My personal opinion is stories like this that are in the Bible are to show us how to not behave as well. You don't want to be a Rachel. You want to love your sister and celebrate. One thing with Brittany and I is we celebrate each other. When she's down, I'm down with her. When I remember when you got pregnant with London, it was almost like I got pregnant. I was like, I was so excited. Like, I just wanted to explode. And I remember when you had London, holding her and waiting for you guys to all leave the room so I could snuggle her and be like, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. And I can't imagine not wanting to be in her life or hating her. It really shows you, okay, here's how we can act and here's how we shouldn't act.
2 spies went into Jericho because that was their promised land. And while they went there, they stopped and stayed at Rahab's house because they needed it to be like conspicuous, and you're not just going to go like knock at the door of anyone in Jericho. You're going to go to a prostitute's house where people are in and out all the time, where they could like hide. So they go to her house, and the king ends up sending for them to be killed, and she hides them upstairs, and she just turns out to be such an awesome, like, to me, she's one of my favorite women of the Bible. I love her.
That was one of the first things that I noticed about her as well, was just her belief in this God that she heard of. She heard what he did. Joshua 2 verse 10 and 11, it says, we have now heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did in Sihon and Og, the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan, who were completely destroyed. When we heard of it, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below. And that, like you said, that really is mind-blowing, because, given her profession, this isn't a God that she has chosen to actively follow, but she has no problem recognizing his power based on these historical events that she has heard. And I love that about her. And I think that says so much about how God so carefully and creatively chose to use her for the good, really, of his people.
So many times we live in a society, Tony Evans, I was listening to him, he put it as secret agent Christians, and I love that. You know, there's these undercover Christians who have faith in God, who believe in God, but aren't willing to confess with their mouths the goodness of God. So when you sit back and you just sit in your house and say, well, I believe in God and I'm going to go to heaven, that's fine. But if you want to receive the covering of Jesus and the covenant of Jesus, you need to be confessing him with your mouth and drawing people on earth while we're on earth to God. And that, you know, again, I'm reiterating the boldness of Rahab, but it's powerful. And when you think about what they were doing in the Old Testament, I mean, this isn't like, oh, they might lethally inject you and you'll go peacefully in your sleep. I mean, they would probably have beheaded her, and her family right then and there. They don't,
It just goes to show that no matter what you in present or who you are, what you've been through, none of that matters if you are willing to step out of it. And then come under God's covering. Not staying in it, but she chose to step out of that and say, no, now I'm now going to believe the God of the Israelites. So you can you can let go of your shame, you can let go of your guilt, you can let go of your past, how dirty you think you are, how whatever you think you are, you can let go of it, and at any moment, step under God's covering.
It's never what we expect. People expected Jesus to come born in gold. A gold robe and a crown. I said it's not what happened.
Right.
And Rahab's name went from shame and low to favor and honor, just from simply stepping and saying, okay, I'm just going to align myself with your God because I believe that this is the one and only God. And like that, in an instant, things are changed for her. And I love that her reputation, even though she may be known as, hey, this is who she was in the Bible, but that wasn't her reputation as she continued on living and as her family reaped the blessing. So I think that that's really, really, really cool.
Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. You can also access our content through the FISM app. Download it today by clicking the link below or visit FISM.tv to learn more.